the safety of the people, I think the American government has the right to do whatever.
There's laws in place, they need to be enforced.
Every year, my insurance payments, my premiums go up.
Something's got to be done because there's a lot of people running around without health care.
Obviously, there's a lot of debate as to whether illegal aliens are a positive influence on this economy.
It's hard for us to afford everything the way it is, and then for us to have all kinds of other people to support.
But we are a country of the free, and so I think we have to be very open-minded.
I just think proper education, learning the right things.
When I look on television and I see 3 separate shooting incidents,
I think they need to get tough with it.
Straighten out the politicians.
Keep to their word, and to be honest, I think that's important.
They make a lot of decisions which sort of impact my life, impact the children's lives.
I think it's an obligation to vote. I think we all need to do that.
Welcome everyone, I'm Tom Overley. KSMQ in partnership with KTTC is pleased to present to you Election 2006, a series of conversations designed to aid you in voting this November. Our coverage represents a sampling of key races from throughout this region, and it is KSMQ's plan to continue to build upon this very important service by providing even more opportunities to get to know and to understand the issues at hand and the people who represent you in Washington, St. Paul, your region, and your hometown. Today we are joined by Mr. Norm Hecimovich and Mr. Tom Stiehm, both whom are vying to become Austin's next mayor. I will be asking questions compiled by our internal election team and most importantly questions submitted by you, the voters. Neither of the candidates has been provided with these questions beforehand, so let's move right into the first question. Thank you for joining us today. Both of you are longtime residents of the city of Austin, so let's begin with you, Tom. What would you say are some of the big issues that the city faces and will be facing the next few years?
Oh, I think the biggest issue right now is the Justice Center and the downtown revitalization program, the one the city has, and I think it needs to be tied to the Justice Center. Right now we're talking about pulling the Justice Center or the law enforcement center personnel out of downtown Austin and moving them north of town to the Cook Farm site. And when we do that, which apparently it's going to happen, we need to have some plan to bring some people back downtown and what we're going to do with downtown.
And we'll be definitely delving further into that issue in just a few moments. Norm, what would you say are the big issues that the city faces?
We probably have 4 major issues. Number 1, it would be flood mitigation. Flood mitigation is very, very important for the city of Austin because we've had some devastating floods, 10 in the since 1965, so that's one of the areas. Number 2, economic development. We have a Cook Farm that we have north of town, and we need to develop it. We have the DCA that is actually right now going to build a spec building. We have some other parties that are interested in moving out to that area. So we have that, and then downtown revitalization. Downtown revitalization is very important. And then we also have the Criminal Justice Center, which is very, very important because as they leave, and Tom has just indicated, we have to find ways to move the other county services downtown because part of revitalization and having a viable downtown is to have business downtown, and that's so important.
So let's start with the flood mitigation issue. On November 7th, voters will be going to the polls to decide whether or not they want to approve a multi-million-dollar referendum on flood mitigation. What happens if they don't approve this, Norm?
If they don't approve it, we do have some problems because we're planning on what they call local option sales tax to match the federal and state funds that we have for developing our flood program. We've had some buyouts already in the Wildwood Park area, and we want to continue developing that whole area downtown North Main at this point, so that's very important.
Tom, what are your thoughts if people do not approve this? What happens then?
Well, what I'm afraid would happen is we'd have to wait till another flood. I've seen the charts that the city's put together on this, and with the exclusion of the floods in 1978, the floods seem to come every 3 or 4 years, and every time the water level is getting a little higher and a little higher. Most people that I've talked to, it isn't whether we need it or not, it's is this what we need? And I think if it doesn't pass, I think that we need to do more information and let people know just why this has to be done and what it's going to do.
Some people say it's $23 million, isn't it?
That's correct.
Some people say that's a lot of money, Norm.
That's probably approximately 28.
28, okay.
We would actually get about $750,000 on local option sales tax on a yearly basis. But there's a window in it. It cannot go over 20 years. That's one of the things that's capped out. Many cities, you can extend it. Ours is by legislation, cannot be extended beyond the 20 years. And if we have the matching funds prior to that, we can stop it at any time, but we cannot extend it unless you go back to the legislature and have to be voted at the legislature and voted by the people of Austin. So it's not an open-ended sales tax like many are.
Okay. I have one final follow-up question to this, Tom. Why has this taken so long to this vote to be brought to the residents? Flooding, as you said, has been an issue with this area for a long time. Why is it taking till 2006 to have them really, punch this issue?
Well, I think our last flood was our worst flood, from what I could determine from the figures it seemed to be. And I think at that point, the way I read the situation is, at that time, the mayor, Bonnie Reitz, got involved in it, and I think she's been pushing it ever since, and this is kind of her pet project. And I have to say that I agree with what the city's done on this. I've talked to some engineers and people that know water and the watersheds, and the ones I've talked to think that this is the answer and that it's going to work. And I think the city's done a good job on this. As we talked earlier, I haven't heard a single local politician that opposes this that's running for office. There may be, but I haven't heard it.
But Norm, really briefly, some people say, look, this is all about Hormel, the big dog on the street. What do you say to those people who are concerned?
Well, when you look at the North Main, we also have other businesses on North Main. There are restaurants on North Main. We have a bank on North Main. We have the YMCA on North Main. We have a senior citizen building on North Main. So we have other buildings on North Main also. So it's not just protecting the large company. As a matter of fact, it would not be protecting of the Hormel company. It would be part of the South corporate office. But you're also looking at other businesses, and we cannot afford to lose any business in North Main or any place in Austin, because we've moved out 200 and some homes in Austin. And
we'll talk about downtown development in just a moment, but first let's move to this new courthouse issue. What were your thoughts? Again, I know you touched on this, Tom, just a few moments ago, but the new courthouse location, how do you think downtown and the city overall will be affected by that decision?
I think it's going to be negatively affected. The other day I went to the high-rise and talked to the residents there, and they said when everybody moves out, they're going to close the stores, and where are we going to go? We don't have cars, we don't have transportation. Some of them were in motorized wheelchairs, and they said, what are we going to do if the courthouse moves out? And I think the city needs to, I think the city has a pretty good program in place, but I think they need to keep looking at it, what we can do to get other businesses down there. The county's talked about moving social services down there, but where are they going to go? Are they going to put them in the courthouse? Originally, I thought they'll move social services down, put them in the courthouse, and everything will be fine. But from what I understand, they're not talking about putting them in the courthouse. They're talking about building another building on top of taxes that we're going to get from the 36 to 44, because those are the estimates I've heard. Justice Center, how are you going to afford to build anything else down there? I think these things have to be planned out. And what are we going to do with the courthouse itself? I think it can be turned into an asset, but the city and the county have to work together on that, and that hasn't been happening.
What are the plans for the existing courthouse?
I have heard no plans at all for the courthouse.
They're just going to vacate it?
Well, they don't know. They've talked about tearing it down, but some of those floors are 10-inch poured concrete. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money to take that building down. Maybe there's something they can do with it. I think that has to be looked into before you just start, you know, getting some company and paying them all kinds of money to tear something down that maybe could have been a benefit to the city where it is as it is, or, you know, with renovation, but not huge amounts of renovation. Or can it be turned into a place for social services, and why not?
Okay, and I'd be curious to further explore some ideas as a mayor, as a potential mayor that you may have for downtown. But Norm, let's talk about this. What are your thoughts on this new location?
Well, my feelings on that is the fact that talking to the county, and one of the options we put in selling the property was the fact that we wanted the county services to stay downtown. And the human services, which presently are at Oak Mall, will be moving somewhere. And the county would like to move them downtown, but there are some scuttlebutt going on that maybe the state would be taking over human services. So if they do, then the county would not be responsible for where their location would be. But I know part of the plan of the criminal justice and county courthouse has to be a total plan, because you have to renovate the present courthouse so that it can be used for other services. Because, you know, the people of Boston need to have a one-stop shopping for county services, and it has to be down there. And maybe the city can be involved in it, but, you know, it does belong to the county, and if we're going to move any city services in there, then they would have to involve the city. And we're right now we're just having an open dialogue with them, but we do not have the final authority on the county property.
In this part of the conversation, I want to open up the conversation to allow you, Norm, to ask your opponent, Tom, a question that's relevant to the city of Austin.
Well, no, I think, you know, I think Tom and I do agree on many items, because I don't think we're in direct conflict, because, you know, as you look at the city of Austin, or you look at the courthouse, or downtown revitalization, I think we're probably all in agreement.
But what makes you different from Tom?
Probably our backgrounds. Tom's been a police officer for 30+ years, and has a, you know, good, strong background in police. One question I would have for Tom, because I heard it the other night, was the fact that he did not concur with doing away with the police commission, and the only thing I would do is ask him, is there a good reason for it? Because we were under the assumption that, you know, it was recommended by the authorities or, you know, your department head. So we're just,
Sure.
That's something I'd like to know, you know, what his thoughts are on it.
Explain, Tom.
My view on keeping civil service? Well, I watched this as it developed, and one of the primary reasons that this was initiated was because we're having problems in the hiring process. We've had a lot of good candidates come in, apply, get on our list, and by the time we get around to offering them a job, the best ones are already gone somewhere. They're either in Rochester or Albert Lee or someplace else.
It's a competitive market.
Right, and I believe the administration was saying is that this would speed up the hiring process. But to me, the Civil Service Commission is a civilian review board on the police department. And if you have a problem with the county law enforcement, you don't vote for the sheriff. You kick Therese out and you get a different sheriff if you don't like what the sheriff is doing. If you don't like what the police chief is doing, you get a different mayor, because the mayor basically sets policy for the police department. If you take away civil service, where's your oversight? There's no oversight on the police department. You know, if you don't like what the chief is doing, then what do? Come in and complain? And he'll listen to you. I mean, the chief has been a friend of mine for 27 years, and I don't foresee problems, but why set it up that, you know, who knows who's going to be the next chief? And it's just a civilian oversight is needed, I think. And
I want to go further into that, the issue of the relationship between the mayor and the police department. But first, I want to offer you the same opportunity to ask Norm a question.
Well, the only question I had for Norm was on the same issue, that you've said at the last debate that you backed the chief on the civil service thing. Are you going to stand by that if you are the mayor? Or
Well, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that's why I said, you know, I think whoever is in there, I think I've always been a person who believes in chain of command. So if it is recommended by our department heads, if it's in the police department, or if it's in the engineering department or park and rec, usually we try to listen to our leaders. But, you know, at the same time, when Tom mentioned that the other night, I said I'd like to talk to him about it, because I have to hear another perspective. And I think, you know, if I could be convinced otherwise, I think I certainly would look at it, because I think what we have to do is make the best situation for Austin, Minnesota. And if Tom is, you know, right on what he's saying, I'd have to do some research and look into it. I don't think I disagree with Tom.
Our union, the police officers are in a union. So if they have problems with the administration, they have support. Our police supervisors, I was president of our police union for probably 7 years, and the president of the supervisors unit for probably 5 years. Our supervisors have no union. They have no organization. They do their own negotiating. We've done our own negotiating ever since I've been here. So if they are brought up on charges and they have a problem, they have to hire an attorney. Twice in my career, and it was years and years and years ago, I did have to put issues in front of the Civil Service Commission. Issues that could, if there was no Civil Service Commission, would have cost me a lot of money to straighten out, because there was a Civil Service Commission. Each time they read the report and they determined that there was insufficient evidence to even have a hearing on it. Okay. So I mean, I found them very useful.
Right. Let's move on to what you view as the mayor's role in the police department, that relationship as it stands now. Are you happy with that, or do you see it in a different light, Norm?
Well, under the ordinance, you know, the mayor is in charge of the police department. Right. But I think, as a person, in my role as being a principal for many years and working in those kind of roles, that I think it's collaborative leadership, that we kind of deal with the city administrator, we deal with the police chief, and we have to take the recommendation, because these are the professionals in their area. So I just feel that that's the way you have to operate. I don't think I would want to say that I run the police department as mayor, because that is not my role. My role is to help run the city of Austin, or see that all programs are run in the city of Austin. And I just feel that in any organization we have to rely on our department heads to advise us as to what should happen or shouldn't happen.
Okay, Tom.
I do what's being done now. I think the mayor sets policy for the police department. I think the mayor, even though they're not involved in the day-to-day operations, I think, you know, no mayor should try and stick their nose into the day-to-day operation, who does what, who you promote, that type of thing. But the mayor sets policy, because the mayor is elected, so the mayor is getting pressure from the people, and based on that pressure, she has, I believe, talked to the chief, and I'd do the same thing if I were the mayor. I mean, as I've said, Paul's been a friend of mine for 27 years. If I was elected mayor, we'd be standing side by side, not nose to nose, and we'd come up with a consensus on things. There are things that, you know, I think can be done that maybe he doesn't think can be done, and maybe we'll have to compromise. I don't think a mayor could come in and say, I'm in charge and this is the way it's going to be. But I have 30 years experience in law enforcement. I broke the chief in. I mean, I had like about 3 years on when the chief came, you know, joined the department, and his background is administration, mine is patrol and investigation. You know, I think when you add those up together, I worked for 30 years with a partner in the task force, and I wanted to do everything now real quick, and he said I wanted to do things too fast. He wanted to do them too slow. We worked together, and we did them pretty good over the last 17 years.
So Norm, what do you think about Tom's comments? Because you do have 40 years of experience in the public school system.
Right.
What about that relationship with the police department?
Well, I don't think I would have any real problem with it. I also was a military policeman. I have been a provost marshal. I'm a graduate of a CID program, Criminal Investigation Division, so I do have some law enforcement background, but not as strong as Tom does, because Tom has definitely dealt with it more directly than I have. But I have supervised military people in law enforcement, so I do have some experience in that.
I want to talk about downtown. So many smaller cities have this issue of the downtown slowly eroding, that erosion, and how do you visualize a rejuvenation of downtown Austin, Tom?
Well, when I got serious about running for this job, I went down and talked to Jim Herm, the city administrator. I talked to Tom Dankert and some of the other city people. And I said, tell me what's going on. I'm a blank piece of paper on this. My background is in economics, it's law enforcement. My dad was a small businessman his whole life, but I don't have the background in business, and I haven't, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what the city was doing. They explained the downtown project, they explained what's going on with the silver bullet, and right now I'm in total agreement with them. I believe we have to invest in our downtown. I retired about 2 months ago, and my mom came up for my retirement party about a month ago, and as we're driving down Main Street, she said, "Is this your downtown?" And I said, yeah, you didn't think much of it. And she said, "This is really nice." She said, "Boy, you should see the downtowns in the towns where I come from. They don't look anything like this." And you know, right about then I started thinking, people do take pride in their downtown. And I think we need to spend taxpayers' dollars on it. Right now, I think they're doing a good job, but I think we have to closely monitor what's going on. And if it's not what we want, do something else. I think we have to do something. It's just we have to determine what the best thing is.
But overall, they're on the right path.
I believe they're on the right path.
Norm, downtown.
Yes, I certainly believe that we are on the right path. When you look at downtown, we have to look at our downtown revitalization and make sure that it's more of a unique area, because we have in our society the big box store philosophy, and everybody's going to the big box store. So you have to look at downtown, and there has to be reason to be downtown. And so we have some unique shops. We started with the Granleys, who are just fixing up their building, and the Silver Bullet, which will be the B&J and South Central Athletics, and they are taking over a building. And so if we can get buildings like that, and we just had a new business open on Main Street. But we have to have something unique for people to come and visit. And like Tom's mother would say, she wants to see something unique. Anybody can go to a large box store and find everything that's out there. But the uniqueness of downtown, we have a Hallmark store which is very, very unique downtown. And I'm on the Chamber of Commerce, and we really looked at it very strongly and see what we can do to revitalize the downtown area. And I think these people in the high rise too, there is a small grocery store, a very unique grocery store downtown.
So they have some options.
So they have some options. They need places where they can go with their wheelchair and places to buy groceries, because they have to continue to live there.
I want to ask you quickly, Norm, too, just briefly, should the city of Austin ban smoking in public areas? We're talking downtown and throughout the city.
Well, that's been a very tough issue, because banning smoking, I've never smoked in my life, never been a smoker, so I'm not against, I'm against smoking per se, but I also believe that private businesses, when they buy a business, they should have some option in their life to say, should people smoke in their place or not? And
because there are people who want to go to a bar, for example, and smoke.
And so that's when you put restrictions on private business. If it's a public building, we can do something about it. We can say there's no smoking. But when it comes to private, you buy a place, and then all of a sudden somebody comes in and says you cannot smoke. And I know Rochester has done that in it. And for some it's good, and for some it isn't. And the same thing, clubs.
Tom.
I'm not a smoker. I did smoke. I no longer smoke. I wish there was no such thing as tobacco. Unfortunately, there is. And I agree with Norm on a lot of what he says. In public places, we may have an ability to limit the smoking or stop it. In restaurants, I went to a restaurant the other day and ate, and somebody was smoking, and I didn't like it. I paid my bill, and I won't go back there. There's other restaurants I go to in town where the smokers don't go to, and I'll go there the next time, because personally, I don't like to smoke, but I'm not willing to say you have to ban it in your place.
Austin is increasingly becoming more diverse, as so many communities in Minnesota. What are you going to do, Norm, to bridge the cultural divide? And we just have about 1 minute each now.
Well, diversity is a real serious problem, and
It is.
and I think when we get into diversity, you know, between legal and illegal immigrants, if this is what we're talking about, you know, I think we have to do everything we can within the law to enforce illegal immigration, but we also have to be very, very careful that we do not get into profiling people because they're of the different culture or race.
It's been one of my issues in the campaign is the illegals, and I think what we need to do is build bridges to the Hispanic community, the Mexican American, Hispanic Americans, and the Mexicans that are here legally. But right now, the city of Austin has its arms wide open to anybody that wants to come into town, and maybe we don't need them quite as wide open. How we do that, I don't know. I can't envision using the police in any scenario, because they can't do that by federal law, and it would break down their relations with the minority community. But there has to be something. There has to be some dialogue you can start. One other thing, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the Hispanics that are coming to Austin are from very rural areas. This is the reason we have a lot of specific crimes related to them, because they come from rural areas. It's the same as if they were in rural United States and Appalachia a long time ago, and they're not used to the restrictions that society's put on. And there has to be maybe a program or some way of taking these guys from this society that they're in and putting them in Austin. I mean, they need more than they're getting right now.
Right. Definitely an issue that would be interesting to talk about further sometime. But unfortunately, our time is up already. A half an hour, a good discussion on some pertinent issues for the city of Austin. I appreciate your time and joining us today. And also, you know, voting is one of the key ways that you have for staying active involved in this decision-making process in our country. So we do encourage you to exercise this right and this privilege. And remember, Election Day is November 7th. And there is more great programming coming up on KSMQ. For KSMQ and KTTC TV, I'm Tom Overley.